number one source, Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to episode 368, Sports Card Nation. We have Paul Lesko, part 2 of 4. If you didn't catch last week's show about a grading card company losing an Honus Wagner card, go catch that. Today, how about PSA damaged my card? If you're into grading, it's probably not. You've probably heard that before. Hopefully it's never happened to you, but today's show is going to talk about a legal case involving a damaged Kobe Bryant card and the value lost based on the damaged. And the plaintiff is alleging that PSA damaged a refractor card of Kobe from the condition he sent it in, and he wants to be compensated. And this case would be precedent setting if the plaintiff wins, because I think we've all heard at least once somebody claim that their card was damaged. Now, I don't want to just pick on PSA, but by a grading card company. Heck, I'll be honest with you. I do the bulk subbing for SGC, and I've had not someone definitely saying, but just sort of questioning, like I didn't notice that when I sent it in, although I send in the cards that they give me, and after that, we're at the mercy of the grading card companies doing the right thing. So, a very interesting case on today's program, and I think you'll enjoy it. As always, want to thank my sponsors, Iron Sports Card, Rob Valente doing a great job there. Sports Collectors Digest, the longest hobby publication, and I get to write for them. Hobby Hotline, our Saturday morning conglomerate show, and Upper Deck. So thank those guys. And with that being said, let's get this show and Paul Lesko back on for part 2. All right, here is part 2 of our conversation with Paul Lesko, and we're going to be talking about a court case where PSA allegedly has damaged a Kobe Bryant card. So here we go. PSA, damaging a card somewhere in the grading process in their possession of the card. And I've heard people, without even going to litigation, I'm sure you have too, seen people go on social media and say, look what PSA did to my card, or that's not the condition I sent it to them in, and here is how I got it back. Talk, but when it comes to a court case, let's tackle it.
Yeah, and I think that's, the cases that interest me the most. Like, while we can't relate to, back at losing our T206 Honus Wagner, we have heard about it. We've heard about people, I sent in a card, they sent it out on FedEx, it never arrived. We've all heard stories like that. So at a minimum, you can relate to it at a basic level. But this one, I think people can relate to more so. This is a case that's been going on for 4 or 5 years. So it has to do with a 1996 Kobe Bryant chrome rookie refractor from Topps. And the card was sent in by the plaintiff to PSA. And when the card came back, I think it came back as there was what he called like a dent or a divot in the card. And he's had pictures from beforehand. He submitted, he's got pictures from right when he handed them in. He's got pictures from afterward. And you can see there's something going on with the card. There's something that was there that wasn't there beforehand. So his allegation, he's alleging that, hey, this card should have been a 10, maybe 9, but it probably should have been a 10. Because you've damaged a card, you slabbed it as an 8, I've lost significant value. And especially when you're looking at a case from 4 years ago, 5 years ago. 2020 was a boom time for cards. So there, I think I don't remember the exact value he's looking for, but it was several $100,000. He believes he has been damaged from the card going from a 10 to an 8. So this case has been going on forever. And finally, we had a trial in the end of November, no, it was the beginning of November. We actually had a trial in this, but the trial was in a state court, and the docket does not update very well. So we don't know what happened. We don't know the result. We know that there were 3 days of trial. And the plaintiff rested after day 3, and then it was time for the defense case. And we don't know if the defense put on a case. We don't know what happened, and it's really frustrating because this is one of those cases where, like we talked about, what is the value of the card? Well, first of all, what is the obligation of a grading company if they damage the? That's what's important about this case. It'll help decide that. But the other thing is, what's the value of the card? Are we valuing this card when he submitted it? Are we valuing the card today? Because it's had, that card's probably had $180,000 swing in value because the case is long. So it's a really interesting case. But it also had a funny side issue where the plaintiff never cracked the slab. And that's one of those things where if I have cases that involve trading cards, especially if it's against a grading company, I want the card in the slab. I want to be able to show.
Well, to me, not to cut you off, Paul, if he cracks it out of the slab, he doesn't have a case really.
Well,
because
if he cracks it, so part of the defense that PSA said was, hey, it's not damage to the card, it's just some like dust or something that's stuck in there. So if you just crack it out, the dust will go away and you'll see your card is perfect. Now, so he included some close-up shots, and it really looks like it's actual damage to the card because the chrome layer, it looks like the chrome layer is rubbed off and you can actually see the cardboard. But his lawyer's position was this defense that it's just something stuck in the case is ridiculous. So we never wanted to crack the card. But get ready for trial, and that's one of PSA's defenses. So the plaintiff said, well, you know what? If I want, I can crack the card on the stand and let the jury see what's going to happen here. So if you're going to put forward that defense, we're going to crack the card on the stand. To which PSA brought a motion saying, no, you can't. You cannot crack the card because if you're going to crack the card, you needed to do it while this case was running for 4 years so that we could have experts in the room to make sure you're cracking the card correctly. And then afterwards, we can have our experts look at it. You can't just crack it on the stand because crazy things can happen. And that's one of the things I want to see what was going to happen in this because the judge he hadn't totally ruled on this yet, but it looked like he was more of a let's maintain the status quo. If you haven't cracked the card up till now, you probably shouldn't crack it during the case unless something weird happens. So now we don't know if the card was cracked or not. And that's something that I really want to see because it's funny where someone's willing to crack their card and the other side saying, no, don't crack it out of the case. But
this case may be resolved and you just don't know how it was resolved.
It could be, and that's what's frustrating because the last day that we have like a transcript, not transcript, but we have minute order from the court explaining what happened during trial is from November 5th. So we are over a month since the 3rd day of trial, and we've had no updates from the court on it. So we don't know. Somebody could have won. I mean, this case could be over, and we just don't know. So it's somewhat frustrating.
How do you find out, or there's not necessarily a foolproof way? Are like attorneys, like if you knew the attorneys in the case, could you, as an attorney, say, "Hey, what happened with your case? How does that work?" Or are they not allowed to speak on the result?
They are, and I am familiar with the lawyers, at least on one side of this case, and I'm familiar with the experts that were utilized in this too. However, when it comes to how I cover cases, I only cover what's on the docket. I only cover what the parties have filed because when you're filing something with the court, you have to do it for like federal court, you have to do it under what's called Rule 11, meaning you are basically swearing under penalty of perjury that everything you're saying is true. So because of that, I only go by what's on the court docket because somebody is swearing that everything in there is true. Now, sure, they may be pushing it a little bit, but that's what the other side is there to push back for. So I really don't like to talk to people outside of the cases and get their opinions on everything. Now, I figure for this, you're right. I should probably just reach out to somebody and say, hey, is it over? Is it still going on? But I keep hoping that the court website will just update and tell me because that's how, I mean, we're in 2025. Federal courts right now are beautiful. They update daily. You can, if you have access to the PACER system, you can see what's going on in any case federally all across the United States, all 50 states, whenever you want. Problem is, this is in a state, and some state courts have very good dockets. Some state courts have abysmal dockets. Some state courts, like this one, have dockets where you have to pay money to actually see what's going on. So this is one of those dockets that I think it's a little bit backwards. It costs money, and you just really never know what's going on. So so that was a long way of saying there's a way to figure it out. If it was in a better court, we would know, but it's in a court that's difficult to understand what's going on there. So I just don't know what's happened.
Time to hear from one of our great sponsors, but Sports Card Nation will be right back after that.
Hobby Hotline is the hobby's only live interactive call-in show. Join some of your favorite hobby personalities every Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, to discuss the hottest hobby topics. If you miss us live, catch us after the fact on all major podcast platforms. Follow us on socials at Hobby Hotline.
Let's go! You are listening to the Sports Card Nation podcast.
Let me ask you this. And I could be like completely wrong here. I would think if the plaintiff won the case, he'd probably go to the mountaintop and scream like, "I beat PSA. You know, don't let them like ruin your cards," or take the. And again, maybe he did that, and we haven't seen it, or I haven't. But the fact that neither one of us knowingly has seen something like that, can we kind of make the assumption that PSA won, or you really can't?
You really can't, because most cases settle with a confidentiality agreement.
Yeah.
And so, if the case went to the jury, I think you're probably right. If the case went to the jury, or if the judge determined it, however it was going to be determined, I think whoever won would have been touting their win. Would have been said, "Hey, we won this case. We shut it down." So maybe it hasn't been decided yet. Maybe it's been put on hold, or maybe the parties settled it. And then that could be why the docket's not updating, because the judge is like moved on to other things. He's like, I don't need to update a docket for a case that's already resolved. It's just we just don't know. It's frustrating.
And let's say PSA settled with the plaintiff, right? Part of that settlement can be like, you don't just, the case is over. We're paying you such and such. Don't discuss the case anymore. It's
Exactly.
almost like a gag order. Like
it'll basically the language that we typically see for settlement agreements like that is if you're asked about this case, both sides agree that they could say that the parties settled it amicably. That's like all you can ever say about it. Then you just have to look at whoever says it, whichever lawyer says it, or whichever side says it. How big are they smiling? Are they smiling ear to ear? Maybe they won. Are they kind of frowning when they say it? Maybe they lost. No, I if this case settles, I guarantee there'll be confidentiality there. That's why I really hope it goes all the way, a final judgment.
Without not knowing and putting on like your lawyer cap, your judge cap, how do you think, if it did end, and how do you think it ended? If it's like predicting the score of a football game based on the teams and the strength, and how do you think it may have ended?
I think, from looking at the card, from what I've seen in the exhibits, I believe there was damage to the card. I believe it looks like some of the chrome has been rubbed off. I think you see the cardboard. So I think there's a good chance that it was found that the card was damaged. Then you turn to liability, to the damages, to the dollar value that the plaintiff should get paid. And that's where I have no idea. And that's really why I've been watching. Is this going to be a $300,000 payment? Is it going to be a $16,000? That's really something I'm looking forward to seeing. And really, for a case that's been going on for 4 or 5 years, no matter how much gets paid, or if there's a zero involved in the case, it doesn't seem that it was worth everybody's time. Well, I think the only winner in this case is the defense attorneys that were probably getting paid on an hourly basis. They've probably done well in this case, but I imagine the plaintiff's attorneys probably took this on a contingency, and I just can't imagine anybody's coming out other than the defense attorneys, which my hat's off to them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, if I'm the gentleman this is his Kobe Bryant, and let's say he doesn't win the case, does he lose on top of that because he has to pay his lawyers and court fees? Like, how does that? I mean, every case is different, but generally speaking, how does that work? Like, Go ahead.
Yeah, so most of the since the U.S. system typically is each side pays their own lawyer. So unless a case is found to be if it's egregious, then you may have to pay the other side's lawyer. Court costs, however, typically the loser pays court costs. Those really aren't anywhere near what they're court costs would be like filing, deposition costs, and it really would just be like standard transcription costs, not even like travel or hotels or typically that's about the extent. If the case goes all the way and there's a judgment, well, then somebody has to pay. If the case is egregious, you may have to pay the other side's attorney's fees. But when it comes to paying your own attorneys, if this case was taken as a contingent fee basis for the plaintiff, he normally won't have to pay any attorney's fees, because the plaintiff's attorneys in that case would only get paid if there was a positive result, if there was a settlement, or if there was a judgment. So so I mean, if the plaintiff does not win, I imagine their attorneys took the case on a contingency and they're getting a big zero for the case.
So they rolled the dice and crapped out.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the type of litigation I do. I'm mainly a plaintiff's attorney. So you always make sure when you have a case like that comes in, it better be a winner. And not only that, it better be a winner, there better be enough damages involved that you get paid. So like with some of my artist cases, a lot of the people that are knocking off artists that are out there, they're artists also. They don't have much money. So if they've caused, say, $100,000, $200,000 worth of harm, but they only have $3 in their bank account, it's not a good case to take on a contingency. And that's why I always have to tell my clients, where not only do you have to have a bad guy on the other side who did something wrong, you kind of have to have a bad guy with money who did something wrong. Yeah. Because if they're broke, all we can do is shut them down. We're not getting money out of it.
All right, I kept this episode a little shorter than normal with the holiday season, and but we'll be back next week again with Paul. We got some more cases on the docket, actually a full docket. We'll be talking about next week Lorcana versus Upper Deck, some of the twists and turns there, Panini versus Fanatics, and then Wildcard versus Panini. And those are obviously two separate cases, but Paul's going to explain to us why, even though they're two separate cases, one may have an effect on the other. So part 3 of our 4-part series will continue next week with Paul. What I like about doing it this way, they're not chronological. So if you miss one, you can go back. You don't have to listen to them in order. And again, the cases have an impact on the hobby in some sort of facet. So, as always, we appreciate Paul sharing his insight and knowledge as an attorney. So, we'll see you here in a week. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, and we'll be back in a week. Let's hear from our Hobby is the People announcer of the week and wrap up this week's short episode.
Time for our Hobby is the People announcer of the week.
Yo and hello everybody, Mike here, baseball collector, and remember that the hobby is the people.
If you'd like to be the Hobby is the People announcer of the week, do a WAV or MP3 file and send it to sportscardnationpc@gmail.com.